And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house with Jeff Bookout. Jeff runs the company Bio-Balance, and he does natural mold remediation. We're going to dive into the ins and outs of mold remediation, how to do it safely, what to look for, how to create a good environment to prevent mold from happening to begin with. Today's going to be such an informative show. I have lots of patients that deal with mold issues, and bringing the experts on that are actually in the trenches doing this themselves is super helpful. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. J. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit more about how you got into this industry. Kind of this industry, it seems like it's like conventional medicine and functional medicine. There's ways to remediate mold using conventional methods, and there's more ways to remediate it using natural methods that don't create more kind of dangerous secondary metabolites and kind of fix the issue at the root. Can you kind of compare and contrast? And how did you get into this industry?
Long story short, so I was looking for a new career as well, looking to be a pharmaceutical rep. And I had some ear, nose, and throat doctor friends of mine. They knew of a company that had done wonders for their ear, nose, and throat patients when it came to mold, wanted me to bring a company like that to Oklahoma. My initial thought was, no, it doesn't even sound fun, right? But at the same time, my youngest daughter was actually going through some extreme medical conditions that we had no clue what was going on. So sure enough, it was due to mold exposure. Long story short, end up doing this for a living, and I love every minute of it.
That's amazing. So let's just compare kind of natural or, conventional mold remediation. So there are conventional tests that are out there looking at the air, and then there's kind of more functional tests, whether it's the ERMI or whether it's some of the plate testing. How are you looking for it, and how are you assessing for mold outside of visually seeing it? Because sometimes the visually seeing mold is kind of like having symptoms. When you have symptoms, well, it's probably been going on for a while, kind of the same way with mold, right?
Great question. So a lot of different ways to air test, and I've done every single one of them. At the end of the day, and I was trained the same way everybody else was, but your typical mold inspector is actually looking for that big black hairy spot all over the wall. If it was that simple, you don't need a guy like me. Right. But I always call there's those obvious things and those hidden things. And give you an example. The number one reason why people get sick from mold exposure is a dirt floor crawl space. Imagine this, the water gets into that soil, contaminates the soil. Then imagine the size of that crawl space, the entire size of your home. Put that up on the wall. That's your big elephant that's in the house. And Most people miss things like that. So it's not just air testing, it's a combination. I like different ways of air testing. That's a tool. I have about $40,000 other gear that help me find that. Infrared cameras, moisture meters, VOC meters, ultrafine particle counters. I look at CO2 levels, look at EMFs. So there's a lot of other things that are involved to go into detail to find what truly is your problem.
Got it. That makes sense. And does the mold give off more CO2? Is that why you're testing for CO2 as well?
It has been found to see that. I love it from I'll call it the dilution. JW, dilution is the solution. JW Biava loves to say. Yeah. And if you look at CO2 levels, and if they're above 1,000 inside of a home, that home is not getting good air exchange. So imagine your home as this toxic building envelope. Anything that happens in here stays in here. Mold, radon, Lysol, hairspray, it all builds up. I want good air exchange in that house.
Okay, so this is good. So you talked about, I think, a big 5 things to look for. You mentioned air exchange, which is basically good circulation, good ventilation with the air. Is that correct? Having a good kind of input and output regarding a lot of your ventilation. Is that what you mean by that, or anything else?
Somewhat, because imagine your vehicle is a mold patch. Yeah. It's outside in the yard. I can get relatively close to your vehicle outside the yard. I'll never have an issue. But I take that same vehicle full of mold, bring it inside the house, it's a huge issue because all those molds will be producing toxins, not all of them, but mold producing toxins, then those toxins build up inside that envelope. So the more you can get air exchange, the more it dilutes those.
And so what does that look like? What should someone be looking for good air exchange? Just making sure the vents are good, air filters are good, or is it something deeper than that? I know with Evan, for instance, you helped remediate his house last year, but he had very poor exchange with his attic, and the attic seemed to be a place, and I think there was a lot of moisture getting in there, and there wasn't good air exchange, and there was high humidity. Is that an example of that? How would you look at that personally here?
Similar. I look at attic as its own separate entity. The living space is its own separate entity. The crawl space is its own separate entity. I don't want those 3 airs to talk to each other. So attic gets ventilated properly, crawl space gets ventilated properly, but most people miss our breathable air. I want good fresh air exchange, air coming in, air going out. They have what's called HRV systems or ERV systems, heat recovery ventilation or energy recovery ventilation. It basically brings air in, throws air out. Kind of depends on where you live, drier, hotter, or colder environment, which one of those two that you need.
Okay, so are we just looking for ventilation on each floor of the house? Is it that simple or something deeper?
Generally, your HRV or your ERV systems, they will do all of your floors. So if you have a basement, main level, upper level, they will hook systems to be able to take air from each level, flow it outside the house, bring in fresh air.
So how's HRV or ERV different than your typical ventilation that's already there? Like you have your vents,
Really,
you have your AC, and you have your heater already in there. Does this attach to the heater or does this attach to the HC, the
you
AC?
can have it done either way. So if I was building a new house today, I would have an ERV system attached to my HVAC system. So my unit's automatically doing it for me. But if you don't already have one of those installed, your regular heat and air is just circulating that same air, stale, non-moving, mold, radon, Lysol hairspray throughout your environment. I went away to take that air, flush it out, get some good air exchange.
Okay, and then so the ERV or the HRV is doing what? It's getting it out of the house? It's
Yeah,
pumping it out?
bringing fresh air in, throwing the old air out.
Okay,
It,
got
it
it.
goes through basically a cylinder that captures about 80% of that energy. So you're just not taking that warm, nice, cozy air in the winter and throwing it all outside. You're recovering about 80% of that energy.
Okay, got it. And this is a standard install that some HVAC person could do?
Correct.
All right, is it expensive? How much would that cost and what brands do you like?
Great question on the brand. I don't like to go brand names unless I personally have used it, so I'm
Yep,
not going to. But
sure.
I would stick with your name brands such as Broan, GE, names like that that you know of and that you've heard of.
And this is an
Um,
ERV and an HRV. Is that what it is?
yes, and the only difference is what climate you're in, hot or cold climate.
Okay, so if you're in a hot climate, it's going to be what?
ERV.
ERV. And then hot climates, what, like Texas, Florida, those kind of areas?
Exactly right. I start getting up into Colorado. Now I want an HRV, so it
So,
recovers more of that heat I'm throwing
so
out.
Midwest, is it more Midwest and up HRV?
Yeah, I would say it is probably not accurate, but it's pretty close. Middle of the road, everything south, ERV, everything up, HRV.
Got it. That's very good. Okay, so we have that. What about humidification? What about dehumidifier? So my home, I put a whole house dehumidifier on in the basement area where my office is because I felt like there was a heat sink between the cement foundation and it just created a lot more humidity, about 20% different than the other floors. My first and second floor, I noticed humidity was always fine because the AC was knocking it down, but the basement was so cool the AC wouldn't trick on that much in the summer. So it didn't have the ability to recapture that humidity. So we got the dehumidifier for the first floor. What's your take on that? And how important is having a good whole house dehumidifier?
Yeah, I love them. Not in my own home, I actually have portable dehumidifiers.
Hmm.
I use two 70-pint dehumidifiers. In the summertime, I empty them at least every 8 hours. That is a lot of water coming out of there. But you can also hook them into your drain lines, get a whole house
That's what
unit
I
like
have
you
in the
have.
drain line. Just easy. I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. At least for the first week, I love people not to put them to the drain lines because I want them to see how much moisture they're actually taking out of the air.
Unbelievable how much comes out. And people are like, well, I don't have a leak. It's like, yeah, the first leak is the internal leak of just moisture, right? When the air is too saturated, natural water that develops can't evaporate. Therefore, mold grows.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a lot of phone calls throughout the day. Jeff, my basement smells musty. Well, when it smells musty, that's MVOCs, mold volatile organic compounds. That's the odor that you're smelling. Is it due just to high humidity, or is there actually water sitting up against the foundation or a moisture intrusion? But a lot of times it's just excess of humidity. So that number I like is below 50%.
Yep.
Between 40 and 50 is probably prime. In my own home, I try to keep it around 40. So once I get above 50, let's say 60 to 65%, mold can start just growing right off the high humidity and dust into the air.
Yep.
65 to 70, I'm seeing it on every surface. It's growing right
Right.
there on top of your laptop, and it can't feed off anything off your laptop. So, and the reason
Exactly.
why I don't like to get too far low, especially during the winter time, So I'd like to keep at least above 35%, around 35 to 40% in the wintertime, because there's where viruses actually flourish, is in real low humidity. Luckily, I don't have the house full of sick people, but if people are prone to getting sick quite often, the lower the humidity, you're actually going to start allowing viruses, things like that.
Okay, so that's great. So where I'm at, it gets actually very, very dry in the winter. So we do have a whole house humidifier that I'll turn on for 35%. Is that a good percent to put on? And do you like whole house humidifiers for that reason? If it goes
I'll say 35 to 40%. Every other week I'm in the Denver area. I do not like humidifiers attached to my HVAC system. Unfortunately, I live in Oklahoma. I go to Denver a lot. I see the need for them, right? Because I don't want bloody noses. I don't want to touch everything and static electricity's coming off. So if you do have one, make sure that the filter remains clean, the filter housing remains clean, and the drain line remains clean. There's where mold is going to more than likely grow.
Okay, good. So if you have that in there, just have maybe a good HVAC guy kind of come out, look at everything, look at the filtration, make sure everything's good. And you also mentioned earlier about, I think it was a MERV 11 is the filtration number you want for the air filter that you put in for the filter on the HVAC as well. How important is that?
I think it's extremely important. If you look at your cheap one that I buy at the hardware store that's green, they measure everything in microns. So a human hair is about 100 microns in size, and a mold spore is roughly 3 microns in size. Your cheap 99-cent air filter will allow a human hair to go right through it, whereas your MERV rating of 11 is going to capture about 97% of all those small particles, such as your mold spores.
Okay, got it. So the MERV 11 would filter out something 3 micron size.
That is correct.
So the 11 does not correlate with the micron size.
The 11 core, yeah, it does. And it doesn't sound correct, but MERV rating 11 will filter that 0.3 or 3 micron in
3
size
microns
range.
out. Okay, got it. And some filters are like, hey, it's a 0.3, it filters out 0.3 microns or 0.3, but then some say 0.03. Is there anything to that at all when you see different brands say that?
There is a difference there because you're talking about numbers, but at the end of the day, I don't want to put too much strain on my HVAC system. That's why I don't go above MERV rating of 11 in there. Whereas your Austin Airs that I know you have, they're at MERV rating of 16. But if to keep my HVAC system running without putting too much strain on that by restricting air, I like just a MERV rating of 11. So as I go down to, let's say 0.03 microns, okay, it may not be getting 97% of those, but it's getting what, 85? I'm not for sure, but that number's still pretty high.
And this is the reason why you don't want to rely fully on a whole house filter, is because it just puts a lot of strain on the whole system. So you rather have a really good filter at the MERV 11 and then have a couple of these, really high quality air filters that we talk about, like the Austin or those kind of things at that 16 rating.
Exactly right. And the other thing I look at is, hey, this is my 8-hour-a-day sanctuary in my master bedroom. I'm going to have one in there, right? I want the best air that I can.
Yeah, exactly. I look at it as, hey, your workspace where you're working and where you're sleeping. Those are like going to be your prime spots, because you're going to be asleep 8 hours a day and you'll be working 8 hours. That covers at least 80, 75% of your day right there. You're breathing awesome air.
Exactly right.
Okay, good. So we have air filtration. We have the whole house air filtration, MERV 11. And any just name brands with those filters, is that good enough?
I use Filtrete from Lowe's. Buy them in the purple package. Yeah. That's the ones I personally use. As long as it is MERV rating 11, I'm happy. I'm not particular about the brand.
Good. If we are in a climate where it's very dry, we'll put a whole house humidifier in. We just got to make sure filters clean, lines cleaned, all that stuff is good to go, and probably just have a good HVAC person come out to make sure things are set.
And that's something you can do yourself too if you're somewhat crafty. Kind of save a guy from coming out, because that's probably. Yeah, I'm not for sure the exact recommendation on how often to change that filter. But if it's me, especially during the winter time when it's being used a lot, I'm going to check it probably every 30 days. Make sure that thing's cleaned out.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's really good to know. All right. So we have the filtration aspect of it, whole house. We already talked a little bit about some of the devices that I use and you use. I use Austin Air. I also have a molecule that does different technology. I also have an air doctor as well. I'm a big fan of the Austin Airs. We sell that on my website as well. So big fan. We'll put links down below. Anything else you want to say about the specific whole house, or sorry, the specific air filtration that you may put in or plug in per room? Anything else people should look at there?
Yeah, and my personal opinion is what I'm looking for is MER rating of 16 air purification and VOC filtration. So what does the best, in my opinion? Austin Air, IQ Air, I like a lot as well.
IQ Air
Air
is
Doctor is up there. Anything that makes a chemical change, I don't like. And the reason why, it may be just fine for me, but a lot of my mold sensitive patients are also chemically sensitive. So when you take a device that uses hydroxyl, which is one of the ones that you're talking about, or if you have a unit that uses ozone, those will produce a chemical change that a lot of these people can have a reaction to. That's why I like to keep it simple.
Okay, good. All right. And then with the, let's see here, I think it's the HealthMate Plus. The big size actually does 15 pounds of activated charcoal, 15 pounds of the zeolite. So that kind of pulls a lot of that nasty stuff out of the air and doesn't create that chemical change. It's more sucking it up than it is reacting with it.
That is correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
Excellent. Yeah. So that's going to decrease the volatile organic compounds as well as the mold volatile organic compounds as well. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay, good. All right. So let's kind of hit. So we have good air exchange. We talked about the MECs or can you repeat those devices again?
Oh, HRV. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. HRV and MEV?
And ERV.
All right. So HRV, I think of heart rate variability testing. So HRV and the second one was ERV. We'll put links down below and we'll have a transcription. I'll try to dig some good products that I find with good ratings. We'll put some links below. All right, good. So we want those in to help exchange the air outside of the house. We want good whole house filtration, right? 11 MERV, 16 on the higher quality ones. We talked about a whole house dehumidifier, potentially a humidifier if you're in a climate where it gets dry enough. What's specific about these crawl spaces or basements now? Because you mentioned, what if you have a dirt crawl space? How do you handle that?
Yeah. So again, number one reason why people get sick from mold exposure is a dirt floor crawl space. So, and what happens is generally that crawl space air is communicating with the breathable air above it, pipes, holes, my water lines, cable lines, some electric, anywhere that air can be sucked up, that's where it's going to suck up. So if you have an HVAC system, when it comes on, it creates so much negative air pressure, it will pull the air from that crawl space and allow it to communicate with that breathable air. So what needs to be done? My general rule of thumb is, number one, a 20 mil vapor barrier that completely encapsulates that soil. That's just a real thick plastic. Jeff, 6 is code. Okay. My problem is with a thinner vapor barrier, somebody gets underneath there, works on the house, they can rip it, holes, punctures, tears. Now imagine that soil as, it's not correct, but you get a visual this way. The Scooby-Doo green gas.
Yeah.
That green gas is coming out of that soil and now communicating. But when I put that vapor barrier over there, encapsulate that soil so that soil can no longer talk to the air above it.
So would just some cement be enough? Would something be like a professional grade laminate be enough? What needs to go down besides that plastic sheeting?
That's it. So, so if you were building a house from scratch and having the cement there already would be a great option. But
so cement's already good. But if you had that plastic barrier, you could probably cement over that as well, right?
I probably wouldn't. The cost of doing that makes that prohibited. So the easiest fix is that vapor barrier that completely encapsulates the soil. Okay,
good. So that encapsulates it. And then what about the cement foundation? Because that kind of acts like a heat sink. There's a reason why I just seen it. You've probably seen it too, is basements always tend to be more humid. And that's because of the porous air exchange between the outside in the ground just being more humid and then kind of going right into the basement. It's kind of a straight shot. Is that the reason why it's more humid in the basement? And then can you waterproof the cement?
So if I was building a house from scratch, I would actually like a basement. From a mold standpoint of view, try to stay away from a basement because generally it is more moist. But if I was starting from scratch, I have my basement walls waterproofed. I have what's called a spider drain system underneath the flooring. That way, if water sits up against the foundation, it goes into that drain. I have spider legs out through the middle of the flooring in the basement. So if a high water table comes up, it goes into that drainage. The sump pump will take it away.
Okay, so that spider pump, that's basically your typical sub pump that lines the foundation perimeter and any water that sits there, it just pumps it away from it. That's key,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
So we have that. And then you mentioned the water. Go ahead. You mentioned the waterproofing too. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, the outside should be waterproofed and the inside, I would double up on that. But the big thing is on basements today, most of them aren't new builds. It's keeping moisture away from the foundation of the house. Number two is make sure we don't have a high water table that's causing excess of moisture into that concrete. But generally your basements are about 10% higher in humidity than the air above. So a combination of reasons, just what you talked about, or excessive moisture, either against the foundation or coming up from the slab.
Yeah, what I did in my house, we have sub pumps all around the whole perimeter, and obviously hooked up to a battery power unit, because in case you have a storm and the power goes out, you want those sub pumps working. So separate battery. And then also our like the what's the word I'm looking for? The gutter system on my house, where it goes down off the sides, we have all the lines buried and they go way away from the house. So when the water goes down off the gutter system, it's buried and goes out, 30, 40 feet away
Yeah,
from the
that way
house.
you're not having moisture against the foundation.
Yeah, and that's another good thing I've seen that's worked really well. Keeps the moisture away, sub pump, and then also bury those lines and get it away from the house. Any
Yep.
feedback on house drainage like that?
No, not really. Trench drain, French drain systems,
Yes.
kind of what you did. One thing before we get off sump pumps, everyone out there that has a sump pump, make sure that that pit cover or that pit is sealed from your breathable air. Because I'll see a lot of times you'll have a hole that goes down in there. I can look down in it, get your nose close enough to it, you're going to smell it. So if you imagine, there's always water most of the time sitting in a sump pump. That water breeds mold growth. I just don't want those two airs to talk to each other. So getting a plexiglass cover that goes over that and seal around the pipe and the electrical cord coming out. That way I can still see what's going on down there, but those two airs aren't communicating.
Okay, good. So I'm already making notes here. I'm going to have an HVAC guy come in and install a couple of those devices and make sure that my system is fully plexiglass off. Excellent. And then if people are in their basement now and they don't have a sub pump installed, and they don't have, let's just say, the waterproof coating inside or out, what can they do besides, would the only options be just dehumidifier and maybe get their water air exchange, maybe get the water way away from their house with the gutter system? Would those be the key cheap things to do?
That's exactly right. Couldn't have said it better.
Okay. And what does a sub pump cost to put in? 5 or 10 grand?
I don't know, but I'm assuming a lot less than that.
Okay. All right, good.
My guess is $2,000-$3,000 range.
Okay. All right, good. So just kind of laying out some options for people that may be chemically sensitive. These are things you definitely want to look at when you get your house done. I'm just shocked that people don't use this waterproof coating on the inside or out. I mean, you think that's just so common sense and probably so cheap. Why isn't that used frequently?
Money.
Yeah.
The builder built it. He's building it as cheap as cost as possible. So why is he going to go through that extra expensive waterproof?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I guess unless you're custom build for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then can you do the coating after the fact? Probably on the inside you could, right?
Definitely on the inside. The only thing I would seal off the upstairs air. That way any VOCs coming off from that sealant, we're not breathing those in, let that air out really good. Because a lot of times,
the thing that I find though, I mean, I've dealt with a couple of different mold companies and you are so much more knowledgeable than 99%. So it's not, I mean, when you deal with mold people, when you go to reach out to mold people, you think there's an expectation that everyone knows the things that you know, but they don't. So can people get a hold of you and schedule consults with you so they can kind of walk through their house and maybe create a plan? Or do you have people that are certified by you?
So I'm working on that right now. He'll be
Great.
traveling with me to Denver. I used to travel the country doing this. It got to be too much. I still have one of my girls is still in high school, and I'll be back Friday night for her cheering at that football game. So training Brandon, and Brandon will eventually be the next me, and he'll be able to travel a lot more. That's one way. I probably do 40, 50 phone calls a day. A lot of those are mainly consults. Jeff, I have a question. I don't care who you are. Feel free to give me a call. Happy to walk you through anything that I can. I believe God gave me a gift to help people, and that's exactly what I do. So
someone could, if I refer patients over, to schedule like a FaceTime and they can just walk with a camera and record, their basement, and you can kind of give them feedback on things.
Yeah, as long as that consult stays low, I'm always happy to do that for free. There are what I call virtual inspections. I don't like those as well as me physically being in your home. But if it comes to it and we need to do a virtual inspection with me, I'm going to charge you for that. But I will
That's
get a
great.
bunch of pictures, a bunch of history, then we'll FaceTime, we'll go through the house. It's not as good as having somebody there like me, but a lot of times just the knowledge that I have will tremendously help them.
Yeah, I have a lot of people that are reaching out. They're like, Dr. J, I just can't find someone that's knowledgeable. So this is great. We're going to put your info below so people can schedule these virtual home inspections because it's better than nothing. Could they team up and get a conventional mold inspector report, and then you could use the report along with a virtual inspection? Would that be better?
I do that all the time because I like data.
Yeah.
The problem with data is it comes with a cost. So if I could get everyone to do about 3 different ways of air testing, my visual inspection, all that data combined is great, but it becomes cost prohibitive. But the more data I can have from somebody else being there, I'm usually not the first guy there. Usually things have failed. That's why they're calling me. So,
and I'm seeing people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on some of their mold remediations, and I think it could be a lot cheaper too. So we're going to talk about some of the natural methods in a minute. So we hit the crawl space, we hit the basement. Was there anything else more you wanted to add to the basement?
I think that's it on basements. If you're looking at a new home or your home currently, the first 2 things I'm asking you is water against the foundation? Do you have a musty odor? And if you do, that's a great sign that we have some issues going on down there.
Okay, very good. And could people do a retrofit of that, let's say, that waterproof coating on the outside of the house? Could someone come in and still coat it after the fact?
Yeah, they have to excavate all that dirt up against the foundation. Then they put a sealant on there. Then they put all the dirt back. Yeah, I've seen it done.
And is it costly? Expensive? Okay. Yeah. All right. So probably maybe a sump pump would probably be the easier way then to start off.
I do. I think most people can probably get away with that.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So we hit the basement. What about the attic? So I know with Evan's situation, he had really poor air exchange in the attic. Is it just as simple as getting ventilation up there? Is it just as simple as making sure your roof's not leaking in the attic? What should we be looking at in the attic?
So a couple things. One, the first thing I always look at is proper ventilation. I need a way for air to go into that attic, a way for air to go back out of that attic. In my own home, I actually put, it's my definition of an attic fan. That fan is attached to the roof of my house, set at 85 degrees in temperature and 45% humidity. So when it reaches that, those fans automatically come on, suck air from the soffit vents and force it out. That way I know I'm getting great air exchange up there. The other thing I'm looking at is my joist and my decking. Do I have roof leaks or have I had roof leaks? I try to trace those back because you can have a roof leak right here. It travels down the joist, then finally shows up, 10, 20 feet away from the actual intrusion site. And there's where mold is going to be into that insulation or the top side of that sheet.
And how are you tracing that back? Are you using an infrared camera to kind of see where that heat exchange is, to see where that leak could be?
If it's currently going on at the time, you can use infrared to find that. But if not, the basic skills. Okay, here's a water line.
Yeah,
I'm going to follow that water line.
Just go
no
up.
more water line. It's going to be dropping right there.
Okay.
Move away the insulation. Is there a problem? Yes or no? But a lot of times on the ceiling side, let's say it's my living room, I look up, I have a water spot. That's a water spot there
because it's going to eventually hit. You got to stain.
Yeah, you're looking at 10% of the problem. The other 90% is on the backside of that sheetrock.
Now, when you get a watermark like that, do you have to go in there and cut everything away, or is it acceptable for it to dry, fix the environment, and that mold won't be there if you can't see it visually?
I will always tell you, if you see water damage on sheetrock, especially a ceiling, always cut it out. The reason why I know is there more than 48 hours, and there's where mold starts to grow, gets exponential after that. So I knew it stayed there for more than 48 hours. It's more than a 50% chance that there's mold growth on the backside.
Okay, got it. So you see water damage, cut it away. We'll talk about some of the natural compounds that you created over at Bio-Balance, which I'm really excited to chat about. So we're looking at the attic. Tell me about these fans. Is this kind of standard operating procedure in an attic for there to be ventilation, for there to be fans?
Not necessarily a fan. That's just forcing the air. Generally, it's either I have a vent or several vents on the roof. That's how the air gets out, or a ridge cap or a gable vent, one on each side that allows airflow. So there's different ways that people do it. I like attaching the fans because it forces that air.
Okay, got it. So how would, if someone's like in that predicament, are they reaching out to a mold guy to have that looked at, or would that be a general HVAC guy that could give you more insight into that?
A general roofing guy. It's like, hey, is my roof adequately ventilated?
Ventilate. Okay,
Is
good. So it'd be something that they would be able to be still educated about.
correct. And a lot of
Okay.
times I'll go, there's no way for air to go out. There'll be a soffits underneath the house, underneath the eaves, but no roof vent. So all that excess of moisture stays, and you'll have mold just growing all over the decking because of that.
Okay, so make sure we have good ventilation in
Mhm.
the attic space. We can find a roofer, probably a good HVAC guy, and then obviously make sure there's no leaks. Any other key take homes for the attic area?
Now, biggest thing is you're looking for any visible damage. Jeff, what does mold look like? If it doesn't look like a new piece of wood, there might be a problem.
Right. Okay, good. Very good. And some mold, I find 2x4s are staying just because they sit out in the outside when they're being built to begin with. So you can have some mold, but it may not be an active infection or active mold issue. How do you differentiate that?
Great question. So you can always send a swab to the lab to answer that question.
Yeah.
JW has a great lab there at Immunolytics that I do a lot of testing with.
Yes.
But if I visibly see mold, you will never convince me that it's not active, whether it's
Right.
giving off mycotoxins or not, whether it's dried for 100 years. I see visible mold growth. I'm going to treat it with a 12% hydrogen peroxide solution, then I'm going to seal it.
Okay. Yeah, we had the same issue in my basement, and I used the Immunolytics kits, and my basement came back at 1. And then
Oh, great.
we hit it with a 20% hydrogen peroxide, hit all the 2x4s anyway. And then we did the fogging solution afterwards, and we got it down to 0. So it wasn't much to begin with. And I'll kind of share my experience. So I found some mold behind the back of my range, the stovetop, and I'm not sure if the sealant from the previous owner wasn't quite sealed properly. So moisture or water was kind of falling behind the drywall, in between essentially the cabinet and the drywall. And it created this kind of moldy environment right behind there. And so we were like, shoot. And I think the biggest fear with most people is if they don't see any damage on the drywall, they feel the need to, should I rip every wall up? And you kind of get this anxiety of like, oh my God, my whole house, I'm gonna have to rip it all up. But then I think when I talked to you and JW, it was like, hey, if you don't see any damage, let's just treat what we know is there. And we hit it with the 20% hydrogen peroxide, and then we fogged everything else. Because if we don't have any damage, visible damage, it can't be that bad. So we'll just fog everything else. And then we'll make sure the environment is fixed and the root cause of that issue is fixed. And we were able to knock, I think, the mold spores down at, I think, 18 or 20 or so in the kitchen. We knocked it down to 1, and everything in the house was between 1, 2, or 0. That was my experience. They were great.
No, that's phenomenal. And always, I like that analogy because everyone is scared, and rightfully so sometimes. Yeah. Jeff, I'm going to tear out every wall. Hang on. Let's find what we do know, fix what we know. You will always have mold in your environment. We just want it at proper levels.
Right.
So am I going to spend my sanity trying to find every little pea-sized spot in a perfect world? Yes, but that's not realistic.
So let's go into the top mistakes that people make. And I think that's probably one of them, is that overreaction feeling. But let's go over the top mistakes that cause people to overspend in their mold remediation. I see people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars where they may have been able to get away with $10,000 or $20,000 for a really bad one. Some maybe only $1,000 or $2,000, or maybe just a couple $100 if it's a humidity issue. Can you talk about those big mistakes and kind of what's the hierarchy people should be looking at?
That's a loaded question. I could go on for a couple hours with this one, but at the end of the day, 3 things need to happen. One is I have to find moisture intrusion and stop it, whether that's an ongoing leak, high humidity, whatever that case is, the moisture's got to stop. And as long as I find that and stop that, then we're going to keep that from reoccurring. Then secondly is find and identify any mold damaged materials, either remove them or make proper corrections. So in my opinion, there's no substitution for removing damaged materials. There are some things in there. Let's say I ripped open behind your stove. I pulled all the damaged sheetrock out. I'm down to studs. My studs, I've got a couple spots, a little bit of mold growth here, there. I don't have, as long as that wood's not wet, rot, or dry rotted out, I can keep that wood. I'm going to treat it with hydrogen peroxide 12%. Then I am 12 to 22. I know you use the 20.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to use a sealant. I like to use a safe sealant, such as AMF Safe Coat. So some of the products that we use are a huge key, because I'm dealing with a medically sensitive patient that more than likely is going to be chemical sensitive as well. So I don't like the biocides, germicides, fungicides, ozone in high doses. Do they work? Yes. Can they hurt you at the same time? Yes. That's why we try to use hydrogen peroxide and the treatment protocols that we'll be talking about in a minute. So number one, stop the moisture. Number two, remove damaged materials or make proper corrections, and do it under proper containment. There's where a lot of people mess up. Mold works like a dandelion out in the yard. As soon as you kick it, blow it, disturb it, thinks it's going to die, throws its mold spores out to regenerate somewhere else. So when I rip open your cavity, trounce it through the house, I'm throwing excess of mold spores everywhere, making that problem worse than what it was before. So make sure it's done correctly. That's why I do love mold remediators. They come in, contain that area off, use negative air pressure.
Negative air pressure, important.
So that's rule number two. Rule number three, treat the air to get those excessive mold spores back under control. And there's where I see a lot of people go wrong as well. Jeff, I've got a clearance report in that stove area. Everything's fine. Well, the problem more than likely has been going on for several years, putting excessive mold spores and mycotoxins throughout your entire environment. That's why we treat the entire house. Get those things back under control and do it safely.
And that includes leaving all your clothes up, right? Kind of leaving all your books there, kind of getting into all that. Don't put it all away, because you may be putting mold spores away and then bringing that back out later on.
I'll hit that two ways. One, there's a general rule of thumb. On all belongings, no visible mold damage, no visible water damage. Probably most importantly, no malodor into those items. My nose is very specific, has 3 different odors for mold. Your nose may be different than mine. If it smells funky, get rid of it. As long as it passes those first 3 criteria, you're exactly right. Get that fog into everything, into your clothes, into your bedding, into your furniture, into your dishes. TSA made me put it in my mouth and in my eye to get it on a flight to Salt Lake City. This is a product that has a material safety data sheet of 0. It's GSE based, grapefruit seed extract, lemon, lime, and tangerine extracts. Then we'll let you ask those questions on the material a little bit later.
Yeah, we're gonna go into that. So I think the big thing I really just want to hone in on, because this is the mistake that most people make, is they just go ripping down random walls and stuff. So you find your leak, you see it, and then you isolate that area, and then you don't go ripping everything up. You just you see it, whatever's damaged. You trace the leak, you see where it's exposed, you remove that area, but then you don't go ripping up everything else. But then you fog all into behind the walls, the joists, the 2x4s, you get it into the HVAC, you hit everything. So even if you can't see it, you're still going to be treating it too, correctly? Is that
exactly
correct?
Right. Okay. So I go 2 foot past any visible damage, water damage.
So only 2
damage,
feet, only 2 feet, got it.
2 foot. Mold hyphae will grow up to about 6 inches in length without being able to see it with the naked eye. That's why we go that extra 2 feet.
2 feet. Great. All right. 2 feet. Excellent. And then anything else, we use the fogging solution to hit it. Anything else you want to say about that, about topically treating and hitting?
No, I think that's the big three things I could hit in your head: stop moisture, remove damaged materials, treat the air.
All right. And then you have the Bio-Balance website where you sell some awesome products that are essential oil based. You have the fogging solution, which can get to that 1 to 10 micron size, which is really important because that dry fog can get into really, really tiny spaces. It can get behind, underneath the floorboards. It can get behind the drywall, in between studs and drywall. It can do all of that. So that's the benefit of the fogger. Can you highlight that? And can you compare the fogger, let's say, to the mister? Because this is one of the new devices you have, which is pretty cool, but I don't think that quite gets to the same micron size.
You bet. So I'll use it in this way. I use dry fog for treatment.
Yeah.
Wet fog for maintenance. It's the treatment system, the maintenance system. Can the maintenance be used as a treatment in some cases where you can't do a dry fog? Sure. But by far the best way is the dry fog. So let's look at it visually. If you imagine golf balls in the air, these are mold spores. Yeah. Now I can see them. Put up a dry fog, which is a true dry fog, looks like smoke, stays in the air. From me to you, Justin, you wouldn't be able to see my hand in front of your face.
Exactly.
So it stays in the air roughly 30 minutes to 2 hours, depends on temperature and humidity. capturing all those excess of mold spores, dust, dirt, debris, virus, bacteria, yeast, gets all that back out of your air. So now imagine, let's use a wet maintenance system. Not just mine, any type that is used. It goes up into the air and a fine mist falls out of the air extremely quickly. Are you able to capture some? Yes. Does it do as thorough of a job as a dry fog? By far, no.
So if you have a serious issue, higher amounts of mold, you probably, or any visible mold, you definitely want to go to the dry fog. If you maybe just have mold issues that are more maybe because of a humidity environment issue, then maybe you can get away with the mister.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. That's really good. And let's talk about some of the different misters. So there's a commercial grade mister, there's a home grade one, and then there's a travel one. Can someone get away with the travel one for their home, or should people be using, like, when would you use one over the other?
I wish I had the product in front of me. I do out a little bit. You kind of see it, especially the home is perfect for me because it can do commercial applications,
Yep.
does my regular residential, but can a little travel mister be able to go around, treat my 3,500 or 2,500 square foot home? You'll get a little frustrated.
So so the travel mister is probably what it is. You're going to a hotel, you're going somewhere. It's probably a 500 square foot, couple hundred square foot area. You just want to get the couch, get the bed, maybe get your little office environment if you're on a business trip or something, or vacation. Would that be a good application?
Yeah, exactly right. My cubicle or my classroom, if I'm a teacher, that's perfect for small areas.
Oh, this is perfect. This is great. You just hit my next thread here. I have a lot of people that are teachers, or they're in an environment they can't control. And they're like, I don't want to use this dry fog. It's going to make a world of, it's going to make a huge mess, smoke and everything for a couple hours, like you mentioned. It sounds like these portable misters, or maybe the home-based mister, may be a good option to fog it after work and no one's there, because you wouldn't even have an issue.
Or do it while you're there and you're able to do it discreetly. So yeah, I have the same issue with you teachers. The school won't let me solve their problem, but I can make that classroom night and day better than what it was. And I get this feedback. I've heard this feedback that's kind of frustrating from some doctors in the past. Why are you fogging? It's a waste of people's money. No, if they're not fine, my job is to tell you, always find the source, stop the moisture, remove the damaged materials. But let's say I'm in an apartment complex or a school or an office that I can't control that. That's the next best thing. I can make that air night and day better than what it was before. Is it going to be great? The answer is no. But I've seen teachers in classrooms just by using this immediately get better. And I didn't even solve their mold issues in that property. They're just maintaining the air.
Right. So you can pretty discreetly use the mister. It's not going to create tons of, the thicker smoke where it could set off a fire alarm, which can happen. You're not going to set off a fire alarm. It's pretty discreet. It's going to happen pretty fast. Obviously, we'd want to invest in probably a really good Austin air filter for the classroom too, correct?
Yes. Oh, exactly right.
What else could we do in that office environment besides the monthly treatment using the BioBalance products and a good air filter? What else could we do?
The only other thing you can get away with it in some places, my wife loves the candles from citrusafe.com.
Yes.
CITRI safe.com. It's a soy-based candle. It's like a mini treatment. So in places that you can use them and can't use the wet or a combination, we love using them. So
great. And the big thing too, I want to highlight for anyone using these products, do a pre and post test. Don't just believe it. Get some data on the beginning side with at least the plate testing. If you want to spend a little bit more and do ERMI, fine. And then do a treatment and then follow up on the post. I think that's the best way to see what's going on, because some people, and I want to highlight this too, some people I've seen it drops, but it's not quite enough and you need more treatment. Or some I've actually seen it go up, and I've talked to JW about this, that the mold is stressing and then producing more mold toxins. Can you talk about what happens what to do when mold goes up after treatment?
Yeah, always give me a call when that happens, because generally there's more than likely still a source somewhere. And you may know that there's a source, or you may not know that there's a source. But it is rare that happens. But if there's those issues, give me a call. I love helping people and walking people through those protocols, because sometimes once isn't enough. They do it the second time and all of a sudden dramatic results. So the big thing is getting results at the end of the day.
Okay, so we'd start off with the dry fog, and then would you still want to use the dry fog until we get it down and then do mister afterwards for maintenance? Okay. And then when people have those issues, what do they tend to be? Like, are pets a factor? What else could be a factor if there's not an active leak and if humidity is good and air exchange is good?
Yeah, plants, pets. Pets are one of the worst. But what I like to do is, okay, if you're going to keep your pets, do a tap test on your pets. That
Yes.
way we know the molds that are coming off of your pets. Does that add up to the molds I have in my air? Yes. Oh, my pet's the problem. I'm going to maintain that with a pet kit from citrusafe.com. Or, hey, I know that it's not something else that I have a source of. It's just my pet's giving this off. I'm just going to have to do a better job there. Jeff,
So
my
the
results
taps,
yeah,
the
tap
tap
test will
test,
tell you.
if this is like my mold plate, the tap test is just kind of tapping it literally against the source, what, 3 to 5 times?
Yeah, I like 4 times. Just
4
put it in
times.
the cup of my hand. Pop, pop,
And
pop, pop.
just tap it. And you can do it up against your clothes, or if you got like a moldy couch and you're not sure, you can just tap it against that too, right?
Exactly right.
Okay, this is great. This is all actionable stuff. I'm telling you, I have patients that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars remediating their moldy houses. And if you're in that position and you listen to this podcast, you'll save probably 5 figures if you do it the right way. And plus, you can reach out to Jeff for that virtual home inspection. That's great. So we have the mold testing with the kit or the plates. Can you highlight the ERMI? Like, when would you do the ERMI? Is that necessary? Is plate testing enough?
Loaded question. I'm not an
Yeah.
Army fan.
Okay.
But the answer is it's a dust DNA analysis. I had a very intelligent guy tell me the other day, he said, Jeff, if I walked out into my yard, came back in, did an Army test of my shoe, I'm going to fail. Probably. I see stuff like that happen all the time. But every way of testing has its flaws. Gravity-fed plates have the flaws. Aerosol cassette, indoor to outdoor comparison has its flaws. I just think ERMI gives me the least amount of data for the most amount of money. What I do like about the ERMI, it can show Stachybotrys and Ketonium where a lot of different tests don't. Because if you imagine mold spores as balls, I had a ping pong ball, a tennis ball, a baseball, a bowling ball. Throw all those up into the air. Stachy and Ketonium are your bowling balls. They fall out of the air extremely quickly, difficult to get on an air test, where it does show up on dust DNA analysis. The other problem, let's say I do a dry fog, I do an ERMI afterwards, and if I didn't start over with all new dust, that dust is still there. Even though it's not producing mycotoxins or causing me a problem anymore, that dust is there. So I always suggest after somebody does a dry fog, I always say 95% of the problem is what I'm breathing into the air. So after I fog, I've taken care of that. But where's the other 5%? Dead mold spores that could still be producing mycotoxins. So where is that going to fall? That is going to fall on my horizontal surfaces. So do a good general wipe down of all my horizontal surfaces to get rid of all that dust, dirt, debris, dead mold spores, viruses, bacteria that was in my air that I got out of the air.
And is it good to agitate the air before you put a plate down? So when it falls, you're going to get a better sample versus something that may already be under the plate, or would that give you a false positive?
So my answer is no, unless I'm pinpointing. So if I'm just seeing if I have mold in my house, at what level it's at, I'm going to do everything normal. If I want to get a little bit more, okay, I've got high mold spore counts, where's it coming from? I'm going to agitate my carpet. I'm going to do tap tests. Then I'm trying to find that area. So, but in a general setting, if I'm just trying to find a snapshot of my air, is it good, is it bad? No, I don't like agitation testing in that sense.
Because I have one patient who I'm thinking of right now whose mold levels have kept on going up after testing, and there is a pet issue, so we're working on that. And then the humidification, the dehumidifiers are installed. The only thing I could think of is this air exchange mediator, which you mentioned, the HRV and the other devices. I think the HRV was the more tropical one. How important is that if everything else is good? Is that a deal breaker for some people?
I don't necessarily think it's a deal breaker, but one thing that is a deal breaker is attic air, crawl space air behind my walls, communicating with my breathable air. So go back to my HVAC analogy earlier. Every time it comes on, creates so much negative air pressure, it pulls air in. So my can lights, attic access in my bedroom, wall plate coverings or outlet switches that aren't sealed. I'm pulling that air behind my wall, in my attic or in my crawl space into my breathable air. I had a guy that was getting sick just because his attic access was not sealed.
Okay, so the attic is going to be really important. When you say attic access wasn't sealed, that means that attic needs to have its own air containment that does not ever come down to the house.
Yeah, so sometimes I see the big ladder pull down inside the
Yes.
house. I definitely don't like that. But usually it's just a little pop off. I'm pushing up the sheetrock. It has a little cutout. But where that cutout is on the interior of that, take some silicone sealant, go around the inside of that. That'll stop those two airs from talking to each other. If I
Okay.
need to get my attic, I just break that seal.
Okay. So if I am a layperson and I need someone to do that, HVAC guy could do it. Just say, hey, I really want to seal off my attic from the regular part of my house. Is that enough
Yeah,
for them
general
to do?
contractor, pretty much anyone. And on the website, biobalancenow.com, I put together a set of videos where I actually pulled out, I have your light switch, your outlets, some ductwork, a can light, so you can see them outside of your wall in my hand and show you where those areas are more than likely going to take attic air and into my breathable air.
That's great. So let's talk about some of the BioBalance products. So obviously you
Yeah.
mentioned lime, grapefruit, lemon, various citrus seed oils that are going to be in a concentrated liquid formula. And then we have the various foggers that can dry fog it to 1 to 10 microns. And then we have the mister. Can you go into the ingredients a little bit more and then the different application processes?
You bet. Both of them or everything that we have is GSE based. Grapefruit seed extract is its primary. There again, we're looking for a safe product, something that is not going to cause issues, a chemical base that would cause somebody to have issues. Lemon, lime, and tangerine extracts, the synergy of all those put together is what makes this product what it is. So the two formulations, one is a water base where the maintenance, so it just goes out into the air. The other one, you do have to add a food grade glycol propylene to actually make it go into a fog form. That's the only difference. But when you heat up those botanicals as well, they make them more activated. There again is another way it becomes more potent than what the wet maintenance is. So we're looking for, at the end of the day, how can I safely get stuff out of the air? And as long as you're safely getting stuff out of the air, I could care less what product that you're using. Do I think we have the best product for that? Without a doubt.
Excellent.
That's the the third thing in the 3-step: stop the moisture, remove the damaged materials. You must treat that air to get those excessive mold spores back under control. And a quick story, I love analogy. So I was at a lady's house. This was in Oklahoma. Jeff, I walk into the walls of my hair salon, nosebleeds every day for the last 2 years, CPAP machine. Well, I drive up to her house to do an evaluation on the property. I think, my 80-year-old client, no, she was 30. Corvette in the driveway. Oh my gosh. Doesn't match the symptoms that she had. Well, she had done gravity fed plate auger testing. I think the highest average was about 35. So I knew there was definitely an issue in there. Go through the
Wow.
entire process of looking at the house, no problems inside of her house. And we sat down, we went over past history, nothing. So I went back to her, you're hiding something from me because what I'm finding in your house doesn't match your mold plates. She ducks her head. Jeff, I had an AC leak in my attic from my kitchen wall, living room wall. But last month, the insurance company came in, they removed all that. Well, they didn't do it under proper containment. So all I was dealing with was excessive mold spores in the air, did a dry fog. She calls me the next day, Jeff, I don't have a nosebleed. Within a week, she's off her CPAP. No more walking into the walls of her hair salon. She called me from Knoxville, Tennessee. She had moved there, wanted me to fly up there to treat her house.
So regarding any area, anytime you're removing wet or moldy area, even if mold's not present, it's got to be done in negative air containment. Is that kind of the rule of thumb there?
Yeah, contain that area off, use negative air pressure. Sometimes you get away with just an air scrubber, same device. If it's a small enough area, they're just using an air scrubber instead of taking that air and throwing it outside. But your larger containment areas have to have that negative air pressure.
Okay. All right. Got it. So we have the maintenance mister and we have the commercial mister, which can be used in your home. You mentioned the travel mister as well. Is the water-based mister, is that the same ingredients as the dry fogger?
You're exactly correct. The only difference is it doesn't have a carrier to take it and put it into a dry fog form. That's the only difference.
Okay. I do notice it a little bit. I think there's a little bit of, was it propylene glycol in there? Is that just a stabilizer or a preservative to keep the herbs intact? What's that for?
No, that is only in the dry fog. And that's what gets it into that suspension state, allows it to stay trapped into the air and go through that heat exchange system.
Do you find anyone sensitive to that at all, to the propylene glycol, or no? Is it small enough amounts?
I've done it for 17 years professionally, going into people's homes, and I've never had anyone react to it. I always suggest that somebody stays out of the house for 24 hours after they treat, a minimum of 12. So that air is completely back to normal. That way we avoid any issues that could happen.
Okay, good. So we have the water-based, and then we have the dry fogger that has a little bit of the propylene glycol, which is the carrier to make it go in there into that dry fog suspension state, which is that 1 to 10 micron size, really tiny. Do you know how big the micron size is for the water-based?
So we always want the manufacturer to post that for us. They will basically tell you 5 to 10 microns is the answer from them.
On the water, so it's still pretty small. Yeah. It's still
pretty small. Imagine a Windex bottle spraying a fine mist into the air. That's what it looks like visually.
Okay, good. We're going to put links here. And again, we have a promo code here. If you guys want to support the podcast or support Jeff, promo code is Dr. J, DRJ, all one word, no spaces. We appreciate it. We're going to put the link down below, biobalancenow.com. I can give you my personal, everyone listening, my personal recommendation and referral. I've used the fogging kit on my house. I had mold issues, pre and post testing, was able to knock it down to nothing. And we've done a video and a podcast on this where we look over my pre and post test, so I can vouch for the solution and the products. One thing I'm really interested in is this maintenance mister, because this is a newer product. I think over the last 6 to 9 months has come out.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So this is great because this allows a little bit more maintenance and a little bit faster and easier. So you're bringing your kid to college, you're traveling and you're staying in a hotel, wherever, you're Airbnb somewhere. This could be a great option for you to bring along. So I like this. Anything else, Jeff, you want to say about the various products?
No, probably the big thing, but I want to get 5 things into people's head that they can write this down. Dry fog my own house once a year, no matter what.
Okay.
Next, I use the monthly maintenance system once a month throughout the house to maintain levels in my house. Next is I use MERV rating of 11 air filters in my HVAC system. Those are the ones that you change out every 3 months. I suggest that you use portable air purifiers in the house strategically and where you're spending the most time. And number 5, get good air exchange in your house. So going forward for mold sensitive patients, that's what I like to do maintenance wise.
This podcast is going to save people, the listeners, millions and millions of dollars. So I appreciate the value that you're providing here, Jeff. It's absolutely amazing. Anything else you want to leave the listeners with?
Anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Head over to biobalancenow.com. A lot of good videos on how to use the various products. Lots of great educational info. And then feel free. How can they reach out to you directly, Jeff, if they want to schedule a virtual home inspection with you?
I'm going to give you my cell phone, 580-574-1373. I know what I just did. That's fine. You got my cell phone. Feel free to use it.
Can you say it one more time?
580-574-1373.
And is it better for people just to text you first?
Sure. Anyways, fine. If I don't answer, I am extremely busy. I'm on the road a lot and I'm on job sites a lot. Leave me a message if I do not answer the call. If I have not responded in 24 hours, please call me back because for whatever reason, I did not get your message.
Absolutely. If you're dealing with an active issue, definitely schedule that home inspection or virtual home inspection because you're probably going to have a lot more questions. If you're on the fence and not quite sure, I think that may be better for a quick call. Excellent here, Jeff. Anything else you want to leave the listeners with?
Maintenance. When you are exposed to mold and you want to get better, it's you don't have to live inside of a bubble, but we do need to make a lifestyle change. And by following those 5 tips on that protocol, I think it'll make a dramatic difference in your health.
Well, excellent. And I've used your services and your products as well as JW as well. You guys have been super helpful, very knowledgeable. So I'm really happy that the listeners have access to you. And BioBalanceNow.com, promo code DRJ. Appreciate it, Jeff. You have a phenomenal day. I look forward to having you back on the show real soon. You take care.
Dr. J, thanks so much.
Thanks, my man. Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right. Great. That was wonderful.